Good morning, everyone. So, if our memory serves correctly, we are making our way through the book of Genesis. So, Genesis, the beginning, the start. Well, we're now more than halfway through the book of Genesis, and we've gone through the life of Abraham. We've gone through the life of Sarai/Sarah, and Isaac. And so now, we're kind of, the text is really dealing with the grandsons of Abraham. So, and this would be Jacob and Esau. So we kind of learned that they're two different guys, really different. So Esau was kind of a man's man, right? Kind of strong, burly, hairy, would go hunting and bring Dad the game. So Dad really kind of liked Esau, especially he liked eating the wild game that Esau would cook up. And Jacob was more of a mama's boy, right? Would kind of, when he was little, he would kind of hang on mama's skirts and help her in the kitchen and those sorts of things. And so they both loved their sons, but Esau was Dad's favorite and Jacob was Mom's favorite. Okay? And of course, Jacob ends up, on the introduction I wrote, so far we've been following an opportunistic Jacob. And he is. First he swindled, probably better said, took advantage of Esau, his brother, right? Out of his birthright. Give me some of that red. I'm so famished. If I don't eat anything, I'm going to die now. Not unless you give me your birthright. Right? And then he fools his dad by pretending to be Esau. Okay? And so he receives the blessing that Abraham wanted to give to Esau. Though we know early on that God said that the promised blessing would go through Jacob, not Esau. In other words, the promised blessing of a descendant, right, through whom the entire world will be blessed, went from Abraham to Isaac and now will flow through Jacob. Okay? So all of these shenanigans, in a sense, were unnecessary. It would have happened a different way, but it still would have happened. It would have happened in a way that wasn't sinful and destructive and harmful to family relations, right? So what does Mama do? Oh man, Esau's really mad. You better get out of Dodge or he might beat you up or he might kill you. He's so angry, the stuff that you've done. So she sends Jacob off back to where she grew up, and now he's going to meet her brother Laban. Okay? And so he's going to live with them for a while. And so we're going to find out, wow, sometimes, well, the family is what the family is. Right? Yeah. Okay. So we're at the start of Genesis 29. Okay? So let's go through the first 12 verses and go from there. Then Jacob went on his journey. So the journey here on the page 1, it says back, but I tried to erase the arrow back. That'll be next week. You can kind of see where Beersheba is way down at the bottom. He's going to make his way up to Haran. So that's a good little trip. If you're going by foot or pack animal or something, it's not, if you're not flying or driving on a modern road with a fast vehicle. Okay? Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it, for out of that well the flocks were watered. Well, yeah, where else are they going to get water unless they're by a stream? A stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. So I guess to keep stuff from falling into the well and also to help slow evaporation, right? And put the stone back in place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." He said to them, "It is well. Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well. And see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." So whatever the practice was, is they would remove the stone and water all the sheep together and then put the stone back on. So these things make you think that water, even though there's a well there, it's still a prized commodity, the way that they're all acting. So the need for water and that not always being in abundance has kind of shaped these practices. Okay? While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled a stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. Okay, so what do we have going on here? Okay, it could be nothing or it could be a whole lot, right? Well, we might have to read a little bit, or maybe if we had Hebrew ears, we might pick something up a little bit, okay? So, but what can we discern between Jacob and Rachel? Well, he's very glad to see her, right? But what does he even do before he states who he is? Yeah, he runs up to her and kisses her like, okay, let's hope it's kind of the kiss on the cheek greeting. We don't know. But he's very glad to see her. At minimum, he could have fallen in love with her. Okay? Because even before introducing himself, he does all this stuff. Which, right? I mean, if somebody runs up to you and you don't know who he is, that's even weird back then, right? So Jacob is a bit of a deceiver, a swindler. I mean, he but here we don't see any of this. So in a sense, this is just whatever's in him coming out. So he's made his journey, and he's at minimum, he's very, very happy. Yay! I'm where I'm supposed to be, and my uncle's fine, and yeah. But let's look at down the bottom of page 1, where verses 10 and 11 uses wordplay to herald that love is in the air. So we need Hebrew ears now. Okay, Jacob's heart quickens at Rachel's sight, promoting him to move the heavy stone and water the sheep before introducing himself. So this is something that he does, right? And of course there were other men there who were waiting for all the sheep to arrive to kind of do the normal watering procedure. Okay? These actions echo his mother's courtship. If you kind of remember his mother at the well and all that. So if we know that, okay, except there is a difference. But Jacob, not Rachel, waters the livestock this time. So last time it was reversed, but it's the exact same sort of thing. Jacob watered the flock, okay, vayashak, and plants a kiss, vayishak. See, so the rhetoric connects these two words, watering and the kiss. So right there we're going, the two are connected. We're not supposed to just see that Jacob is, right? What he's doing is connected to the kiss. So there's more there. And this is what is kind of letting us know this. Like, so now we're going to wait for what? This love to blossom. Because it's certainly he plants a kiss on Rachel, and the rhetoric plants the idea that Jacob has fallen hard for Rachel. Just by this little thing going on here. We'll see if that's true, but it's setting us up for this. And so we should be expecting this. Okay? So let's continue on. Okay. Oh, and this same wordplay we'll find in the book Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. So, that's later on Your neck is as lovely as a gazelle's, or whatever, you know. Okay, 13 through 21. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. But not the same kiss that was involved with watering the sheep. Okay. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. So when he told him all these things, what did that probably entail based on Laban's response? Probably Esau, right? Like, I wonder if he told him that he swindled him and all that other stuff. But he must have told him that, well, things are not well with Esau, and so, hey, I kind of need refuge. And he says, "You are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, so you're welcome, you're family." Okay? So it makes this that Laban probably knows a fair amount of what happened. Okay? Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, you should therefore serve me for nothing. Tell me, what shall your wage be?" Oh, should you therefore serve me for nothing, right? Question. Implication, well, I just don't want to take advantage of you. At least, so he says in his words. So what's reasonable? Okay? And that's what he's asking. Okay? Now Laban had 2 daughters. Oh, okay. Remember the kiss in the water? Ooh, okay. So right now we're thinking, something's up. Okay. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Now I think their names are something, well, never mind. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, now how could he love Rachel? What does this tell you? What happened at the well? Dude. Right? So, yep. So, yeah. And, whoa, she's hot looking too. So, yep. So, okay, so there you have it. So he's in love. So Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that you should give her to any other man. Stay with me." Okay, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Wow, that right there says it. 7 years, and it seemed but a few days. So the love endured. Okay? Wow. Okay, so there. Okay. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." Okay, I've waited 7 years, and I've worked for you just like we agreed. Okay? So now back then, was it weird for this sort of thing to go on? I think so. Jim says yes. And I'm going to say, no, it wasn't weird. Arranged marriages were normal. And so now, maybe this 7-year thing, but yeah, it's not strange that there were arranged marriages. And so when you grew up, you kind of knew that was not weird. So you didn't, today it would be like, what? You don't decide who I marry. Who are you? Right? I mean, so it's a completely different, we have a completely different mindset. And, and even in places where traditional marriages like that were arranged, even those now are diminishing. Okay? So, because it's kind of the more idea of our thinking has really just kind of spread throughout the world. Okay? So Jacob wants to marry, I said Rebecca. It should be Rachel. That's his mom. That's just too weird. Okay. So, but what is the difference between Rachel and Leah? Okay, well, how is Rachel described? Yeah, beautiful of face and form. So, in other words, she has a pretty face and she has a gorgeous, hot body. Okay? How is Leah described? Weak eyes, yeah. Now that term is unusual because we kind of we know the semantic range of the meanings. Okay, could mean delicate, it could mean fragile, it could be weak, it could mean tender. What we don't mean is exactly what is meant. Was she nearsighted but didn't have glasses? Did she have weird-looking eyes? Or were her eyes her only good feature? Did she have beautiful eyes, but the rest of her was like, well, not so hot? Okay. You can't make a solid case on this either way. My thinking is that she had beautiful eyes, but the rest of her was just average. But Rachel. Now what we'll do is we'll find out of all the sons that Rachel will have, Joseph inherits her good looks. Okay, but that's a number of chapters down the way. Okay? And so on top of page 2 where I discuss weak, that would be kind of my thinking. Okay? But it could be that she was just nearsighted and, or she had those buggy eyes. Who knows? It's just a vague kind of thing. But since the text talks about Rachel's favorable traits, it makes me think that the text will be speaking of Leah's favorable trait, her eyes. That's what kind of lends me to think that. Okay? So he's in love, and what does he tell Rachel's dad? It's time. I've done this, worked the 7 years as you asked me to. I've done this. Okay, so there we go. Is he a man true to his word? Let's see. Okay. Verse 22. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. Well, it looks like it. You're gathering all the people and you're having a feast? But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. Right now, this should give us a clue. Okay, so because, we already know something's up because whom does he send? Leah, and brought her to Jacob. What? He wants to marry Rachel. But then also Laban gives her a servant. And so right here this tells us, he's going to marry off Leah. Jacob doesn't know this, but we're kind of given a clue. So if we're hearing this, we're like, what? How? Laban, what? What's wrong with the guy? Okay? So, and in the morning, behold, it was Leah. Well, okay, when you're getting married, what's the deal? You're completely covered, right? And so she was completely covered. And there's drinking and everything else. But I like, we'll explore that just a little bit later, but I like how the text just kind of springs it on us, right? So what the text rhetorically does is it does the same thing that happened to Joseph. Joseph was caught, in a sense, Laban sprung this on Jacob, and the text springs this on us, even though we kind of have a clue, okay? Behold, right? So there you have it. So we're like, whoa, okay? Okay. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this that you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? Laban said, it is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Well, it would have been nice if you said that 7 years ago, right? Or oh boy. Complete the week with this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week. Uncompleted. Okay, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. Same thing, right? Married, need a personal attendant. So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years. Okay. Where would you be if you were Leah? Family, arranged marriages aren't weird, right? But she knows that Jacob is smitten with Rachel. He probably likes Leah and gets along well with her, but he didn't want to marry her. But, this is what's set up. But, so he marries Leah. Well, let's stop a little bit, because this is just, I would be fuming angry if I were Leah. Because, anyway. So, here's the little 2 paragraphs I wrote in the middle of page 2. Below the merry mood of a wedding, a tempest brews. Laban, the sly fox, outflanks Jacob in a game of trickery, mirroring Jacob's past subterfuge. With gripping brevity, verse 25 says everything. In the morning, lo, it is Leah. Such a cruel twist of poetic justice. The text highlights this by using the same root word as Isaac used, Ramah, to label Jacob's deceit in stealing his brother's blessing. So there's that connection. It's right. It's like, oh. Laban disregards Jacob's first 2 questions. Did you see that he asked 3 questions? But Laban only answers one of them, which is the third. He just disregards the first 2 altogether. Okay? So Laban disregards Jacob's first 2 questions in a display of silent dismissal. On the third, he dishes out a stinging retort. It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. That's the standard practice. But it wasn't so dyed in the wool that this would have been considered acceptable. Okay? So Laban pulled a fast one. Okay? The pointed barb hits home. Earlier, Jacob favored the younger himself over the elder Esau, except he did so under the veil of his father's failing eyesight, not the cloak of night. Festivities, drinking, right? Okay. Now, as he garners the rewards of God's blessing, he also reaps or receives a reap what you sow payback for his earlier misdeeds. So, question, what did Laban mean when he said complete the week of this one? Give Leah her week of kind of marital celebration. Then you could marry Rachel. A week later, he's marrying her sister. You've just set up marital dysfunction for the rest of their lives. But, wow. But he still has to work 7 more years, but he doesn't have to wait 7 years to marry Rachel. He gets to marry probably because there would have, well, I know where you sleep. So, work for me 7 more years, but you could marry Rachel, but you have to give Leah her week. Wow. Okay. And we're going to see this, that there is a dysfunction. But God will still intercede in various ways to ensure that Rachel too will have children. Okay? So Jacob agrees to Laban's terms and celebrates Leah's bridal week. Bound by his promise, he will wed Rachel after, though he must work another 7 years for Laban. So, wow. This story is, when you think about it, it's actually very embarrassing. I mean, wow. I mean, how could he even, how could he even get up and face Jacob? But, oh well. Jacob wants Rachel. Okay? And so, love can be like that. And it is good that he loves her. The sad thing is he doesn't really care for Leah. But Leah is also his wife. So God did not intend marriages like that, but he is married, so he needs to figure out a way so that he treats her well and not like, go away. I don't want to see you. You know, that sort of thing. Okay, 31 through 35. Oh, boy. This is even embarrassing to read. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Okay. So God is stepping in some way, trying to kind of help in this regard, where one is able to bear children and the other, at least right now, is not able. Okay? And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. Wow. Do you think Jacob will ever truly love her? She hopes that, well, you know, I bore you a son, and, you know, maybe this could grow into something, and, you know, and it could. I mean, it has happened in the past. She conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. Okay, what does that tell you? Did bearing the first son change the relations between Jacob and Leah? Well, maybe the second son will. Oh, boy. And she called his name Simeon. Again she conceived and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. When I hear, I mean, it's just like, oh my goodness. All she wants to do is to be loved. That's not weird in a marriage, right? What? So, yeah, Jacob was swindled, but he should have had a heart big enough to somehow make this work or try to. But he loves one and, you know, the other, well, it's not so much given the time of day. But she's bearing sons, so. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. Okay, so there you have it. So right now, what? 1 wife, 4 sons, 1 wife, none. Okay? And yet this, I'm sure Jacob wants kids, right? So we know that the promise is continuing because it was through Abraham, through Isaac, and now through Jacob that what? The promised descendant will come. So, okay, so Jacob has sons. Okay, well, let's continue though. Is the promise supposed to go through Leah or Rachel? Okay. Well, we shall see. Okay? So what is Leah hoping her sons will bring about in her marriage on the bottom of page 2? That she will be loved. But right now, that's not happening. It's just probably just a awkwardness or whatever. So, okay, are we ready for the next chapter? So, I guess just as if we pause for a moment. So after becoming a pastor and I visit with people and people come to me and I don't know if I've ever met with anybody. Now, I'm sure there are families that were completely wholesome. But in all my years of counseling and meeting with people, everybody has a screwed up family somewhere. Okay? And look at the Old Testament. Right? So the message of the Old Testament is that we find God is faithful in the thick of all this crap, right? And so that gives us hope, right? Because if we had to have everything all in perfect order, et cetera, we would never have a chance. We would all be like Leah, at least right now. Oh, and, it just wouldn't come to be. Well, let's start on chapter 30 and let's see what happens. Okay? Right now, it's just a very sad tale of one wife is loved and the other isn't. We haven't heard a whole lot about Rachel, okay? Because it's Leah who has been bearing the children. In this case, sons. Okay? So, okay, chapter 30. Let's look at verses 1 and 2. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. Even though she's the loved one, she wants kids, right? Because Leah has something to hold over her. And, so today, I don't know, we might find these dynamics to be strange, but, then I would say for one's well-being and everything else, children were a lot more important. I mean, now, children, I think in relation to what they bring, cost more today to parents. But, children were part of the agrarian workforce. They would help on the farm. They would help with tending the animals. So they learned their skills growing up on what they needed to do to live. So it wasn't as if it was all cost borne by the parents and then, at 21, all right, get your butt out and go into the world. I want to stay in the basement and play video games. So, it was a different thing back then. Okay? So, Rachel says, hey, I would like to have some children, especially a son, because a son, passes on, right? Inheritance, the name. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so she said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Now, what do you think's going on? Do you think Jacob hasn't been sleeping with Rachel? I mean, who's the one he really loves? Rachel. He's probably been sleeping with Rachel a lot more than Leah. Right? But what does she say? Give me children. So in those words, she's blaming the reason why she doesn't have kids. It's you. Well, it could be, but I don't think so, because look at Leah, right? I mean, if it were me, neither you nor Leah would have any kids. So, but see, this is kind of emotional distraughtness coming out, which isn't rational. Okay? So Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Oh boy. Okay. Now right there, this is pretty bad. This might affect their relationship for a while. We'll have to see. Those are stinging words. Then she said, here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her, that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her. So her want for children is greater than the sting that Jacob just gave her. Okay, so we've seen this before, right? Well, if I have a servant, I mean, in a sense, it could kind of be mine because she's my servant. And the expectation was that she will be my servant for life. Therefore, right? Though, as we know, that could cause problems too. Remember with Abraham and Hagar and Sarah? And, we think God needs our help. And so, and then so that in the family dynamics, that ended up giving Hagar a lot more kind of influence and power. Okay? But Rachel, at this point, is just saying, I don't want Leah to keep up, outdoing me. So she wants to try to even the field a little bit. Okay? So there you have it. What do you think Jacob's going to do?
He's happy. He's got 4 wives.
Probably. It's kind of like, well, if I tell her no, I'm just going to get my head bit off. So, okay, let's do it. And then if she gets angry at me later, you're the one who told me. Right? Okay. Boy, this is, wow. Can you make this stuff up? Oh, boy. I think soap operas, they need, who knows, maybe they got a lot of their plot lines from the Old Testament or something. Okay. So, this is just. Okay, verses 3 through 8. Let's see what happens. Then she said, "Here is my servant Bilhah. Go unto her that she may give birth on my behalf," etc. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, but still her servant. So you're a wife, but in the pecking order of things, you're still, you're still down the order. Okay, so there's a hierarchy you can see. Okay, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. So the issue is not with Jacob. Then Rachel said, "God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son." Whoa, what's going on here? Okay, so God has judged me but has also given me a son. So she's looking at kind of both sides of the cutting blade, if you wanted to look at it that way. Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. Oh boy. Okay. Now, the way the text is written, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled my sister and have prevailed." What is Rachel rejoicing over? Not the birth of another child, but she, in her eyes, finally, right? I have enough kids where Leah is no longer top dog. Because Leah has stopped bearing children, and now Rachel kind of is through Bilhah. And now Rachel's like, ha, 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 ha. Well, this kind of mighty wrestlings, we'll see that same word later where Jacob will wrestle with God. And so we get a preview of what will happen later, okay, when we'll see that same word being used. Though, so we'll find out that Jacob and Rachel not only share a love, but also they have a similar fiery or feisty spirit. Okay? So, but wow. At the same time, when you read this is very sad because God is blessing Jacob with children, and the promise will continue. But I'll tell you, man, I would not want to be in that marriage. Wow. I don't know how, it must be rough. The dynamics. Maybe he just works all day and just comes home at night, just to try to, not get caught up in all the intra-family dynamics. Okay? So 9 through 13. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Okay, what's going on here? Yeah, there's this, I want to be the one with the power. I want to be the one on top. I want to be Jacob's favorite, right? And all Leah wants to do is to be loved. And I think if Jacob loved her halfway reasonably, this dysfunction wouldn't be that bad or may not be there. But there you have it, So now, so in other words, this is a one-upper game. Oh, man. Okay. I wonder if Jacob's thinking, well, who am I going to sleep with tonight? I wonder if he's thinking, who do I have to sleep with tonight? He might be thinking that. I mean, he's not 18 anymore. Wow. Okay. So then I'm glad there aren't kids in here. We could say this sort of stuff, but I mean, this is like, wow. This is not a good family dynamic. Okay. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." So she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. Okay. Well, were any daughters born? Or, I mean, growing up, I remember there was this one family who had 12 kids. And I don't remember if they were all daughters or all sons, but they were all the same sex, right? And it was like, I was thinking, well, were they always trying to get, well, we'll try for a daughter. We'll try it, and after 12, we quit. It's just, 12, wow. Of course, you don't really see, even then that was kind of unusual, but there were some kids with really large families back then. Now it's 3 kids? Wow. But, back then, 3, 4 kids, that was normal. Okay. Now it's what, 1 or 2? Isn't that kind of yeah. Yeah, it's not mentioned, but yeah, so this is the whole thing. It's like, well, if there are daughters, they're not being mentioned, or, so these are things that in a sense, we're not told everything. And so we're kind of wondering some of these things in our minds. So, shh. We're supposed to wonder, okay? All right. Let's continue on. Okay. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Now, if you've ever watched like movies or the King Arthur movies or something, you probably have an idea of, the legendary use of mandrakes or whatnot. Okay. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Oh, so now we have somebody else's son. Okay. So they're a plant, and I did put a little blurb. We can look at it right now. So mandrakes, they're reputed to kind of be able to kindle passion, but also increase fertility. And so, what's going on? Well, what do you mean? What happened to the plant? Oh, it still exists, but but it's the root of the plant. And so the root of the plant, I mean, sometimes the root ends up kind of having, when, like sometimes you ever have like a carrot and it was weird and it just wasn't one, but something happened and it ended up like 2 roots. And so mandrakes often would kind of have, like 2 roots and sometimes other ones. So it would kind of have the shape of a person's body. Say it would be like 4 roots or something. And so because of that, there's kind of like, see, so. And it was kind of reputed to have that ability. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's kind of being reputed throughout history. So I'm thinking there's probably something in the mandrake. Otherwise, why would it have kind of lasted so long within kind of the lore of human traditions, right? So what's going on is that one of the wife's sons gets mandrakes, but the other wife wants to use them. Why? We don't need it. You have this game of one-upsmanship still is going on. That's why. It's messed up. Okay? So there you have it. So, yeah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." So Rachel's, right? Okay. Maybe she wants to try to have a son herself. Okay. But she said to her, "It is a small matter that you have taken away my husband. Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Oh, what does that tell you? Not only no, but hell no. I mean, basically, right? The marriage is so bad, and now you're asking this of me? Okay. But what does Rachel say? Because does Rachel have something that she could change Leah's mind? Because Leah married Jacob first. Right? So you can understand why she would say, "Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Okay. So, then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. Oh, well, now what? Well, so in this weird dynamics, well, Joseph can sleep with you tonight if you give me. Isn't that weird? But who knows? But what do you think Jacob's going to do? He's going to come home, and if one of his wives say, no, you're sleeping with la la la, sure. Because most likely, he can't manage 4 wives now. All he's trying to do is probably trying to keep the peace and not have a nuclear explosion. So that would be my guess. But let's see if that's what will happen in the text, okay? So when Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. Like, what? Oh, okay. Oh, gracious. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a 5th son. Oh, boy. Okay. So, but this is, yeah. Anyway, so all of this stuff is going on, and we could just go, Leah still wants love, and Rachel doesn't want Leah to outdo her. And that's the primary dynamic. Rachel doesn't want to lose what she has because she has been unable to bear a son herself. Okay? But let's continue on, shall we? Okay. So right now it's just, no matter which way you look, it's messed up. Okay? So 18 through 21. Okay? Leah said, God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a 6th son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with good endowments. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. Notice she didn't say love. It's changed. So if he won't love me, at least I want him to honor me. I want to have a place of value. And in a sense, this change is kind of sad because she's realized in her heart, love ain't happening. But, but maybe this is possible. But if it hasn't happened yet, there would have to be some huge thing that would happen to really bring this about because, wow, man. Okay. Well, okay. Afterwards, she bore a daughter. Woo! And called her name. We say Dinah, but Dinah. Okay. Yay! Yay! So this daughter will either be very spoiled or could be neglected in all the dynamics. We don't know. We'll have to see. Okay. So a couple questions. How do Leah's words, God has given me my wages, bearing another son, because I gave my servant to my husband, reveal the dysfunction in that family? Just everywhere, right? She's saying this is kind of, we're doing all these sort of weird power plays, and God has what? Given me my wages. Wow, that's, God is still blessing them in a way, but their stuff is just crazy. And the fact that she's thinking or saying these things is just, I don't know what planet you're on, right? But there you have it. Okay, next question. What is Leah hoping that the birth of the 6th son, Zebulun, meaning honor from the Hebrew Zabal, will finally bring about in her relations with Jacob? We talked about that a little bit, right? So if Jacob won't love me, at least he will respect me and honor me and value me as part of this household. Okay, and this makes you think, I don't think Jacob treated her with contempt. I just think he treated her what? Well, you're my wife, but I really didn't want to marry you. You're part of the family. Other than that, right? But didn't really Yeah. That was probably the extent of it. And that's the reason why she's always pining for love and wanting something from Jacob, which Jacob is unwilling or just doesn't want to give her. So, kind of makes you think, you know, polygamy is not a really good idea. There's just too much, yeah. I mean, you would have to be exceptional as a husband and wives to really do well. And most people aren't exceptional. Okay, 22 through 24. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Okay, so this entire time, we don't know all of this stuff, but God was trying to teach Rachel something, but I don't think Rachel ever got it. Right? Because God blessed Leah and not her. Okay? So, the thing is to say, okay, well, maybe Rachel needs to learn some humility and to see Leah in a different light, but instead, she became worse. And so events often can do that, right? So an event can happen and it can change us in a positive way, or it can change us in a negative way. And so here you have it and go, well, negative things happened. Okay, so, right? So if Rachel now is bearing a son, what does this tell you about the promise that God first made to Abraham and Isaac? It's going through what? Rachel. Doesn't that make you think that? Because otherwise, okay? But let's read on. God then remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me. Okay, so she named him Joseph, but then what does she say? Yeah. May the Lord, that's the very tail end of verse 24. May the Lord add to me another son. Oh. It's insane. The Lord has blessed me. I want another son. Oh, it's, wow. She just has to. So this is really this, right? One upsmanship. But think about how were they raised? We don't know the whole story, but what do we know of Laban and what he did with Jacob, right? He kind of swindled the swindler. So you have Laban, and then you have Rebekah, Jacob's mom, and they have like this deceiving kind of mindset, and Jacob also kind of has that. And so it's not weird because they grew up probably, Laban, he used at least his relationship with Jacob, he used Jacob for his benefit. He may very well have used his daughters as they were growing up in whatever way to benefit him. And so they may have grown up thinking that love is something that you vie for. And then, Dad now loves Leah, and now Dad loves Rachel. That could be part of the family dynamic. We don't know, but that seems like a reasonable idea or even conclusion concerning this. And so if they come into this in this marriage, in a sense, they're just acting based on their understanding of love. And that's not far-fetched. When you kind of look at these families and you have multi-generational dysfunction going on. Okay? So, there you have it. Okay? Let's take a look at the names, because I just want to kind of show you these names and in a sense how they point forward to Jesus. So we look at the name and the meaning, and then we'll look at a link. So Reuben means humility. Jesus humbled himself to become man for man's salvation. Simeon, hatred. Many hated Jesus without cause. Levi, union. Jesus unites himself to us in our baptism. So it's not as if these names are definitely messianic, but we can see that they are kind of messianic touchstones, and they're more kind of, if anything, they kind of infer that. We can't say, oh, these names definitely are, right? But we can see how they do when we look at Christ's life and whatnot. Judah, thanksgiving. Because of Christ, we can give thanks to God, most especially for his supper, Eucharist, thanksgiving. Dan, judge. Jesus will come again with glory to judge both the living and the dead. Naphtali, victory. Jesus prevailed over death through the cross. Gad, prosperity. Christ's incarnation is our true prosperity and health. Asher, blessing. Because of his incarnation, Jesus blessed his own with every spiritual blessing. Issachar, reward. That's not a very common name now, is it? Issachar. But oh, my great-granddad was named Issachar. Okay. Jesus will bring his reward to give each according to his works. Zebulun, endowment. Jesus is our eternal endowment. And Joseph, bearing reproach. Jesus bore our reproach. So, just some concluding thoughts. No matter what circumstances Jacob encounters, he prospers. God is with him and is blessing him. This mainly manifests by God providing him with children. There'll be others, but right now that's, he knows and we know that God is remaining true to his promise to Abraham and Isaac, that through a descendant, all the world will be blessed. We don't know who yet this descendant will be, but there are plenty, right? Born of Jacob. Okay? So, meanwhile, life with Laban unfolds in an echo, at least when he was with Laban, in an echo of multi-generational dysfunction, cunning and deception as though a tarnished heirloom continued as a harmful character flaw. He's still living in Haran. So there's still these interactions with Laban, except what? Well, he's now married to both of his daughters. Wow. It's like, now I can't get rid of Laban. He's my father-in-law twice over. Family feuding breeds contempt, fracturing their family bonds. Would you say that's true? They're family, but, oh, wow, man. It's messed up. Okay? Despite this turmoil, God stays true. The promise he first made to Abraham stands firm and unshakable. To be continued. That's the only good thing in this entire mess. Well, I'm not going to say the only good thing, but this story is just, in a sense, it's depressing on how messed up it is. And you would think, why would Scripture even include this? I mean, it's not that inspiring in the sense of, I read this like, I want to be like Jacob. You do? I want to be like Leah. You do? Nobody wants to be like these people. So it's not inspirational in that sense. The only thing that's inspirational in all of this is what? God is... Yes. So God is remaining true, right? They're all messed up, yet God is being faithful to his promise. And that's the large narrative that we take from this, right? So, not that you want dysfunction, not that you want to promote it or make it worse, but our sin is not greater than God's promise. That's what the text teaches us. And that's what we are to learn. Okay? And so all of these embarrassing things, they're told to us because that's the lesson. Because otherwise, this is God's people, I would write a completely different story because God's people are a bunch of losers. Yep, but they're not because of God. Okay? Next week, let's close with prayer, shall we? Oh, our Father, the story of the patriarchs and our matriarchs is just downright embarrassing and sometimes even hard to take because it's so messed up. Yet you love them, you are faithful to your promise, you remain true when they did not. May we understand this about your nature. Not that we may just abuse you or not consider you of value, but that we understand you and who you are by nature and love you in return because you love us so much and are always faithful. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.